This video is sponsored by Parade. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Taylor, and on this channel we talk about life and relationships after leaving the church and do some commentary on the goings-on in evangelical Christianity. Okay, so I know that I'm jumping on this bandwagon late, like way late. I've wanted to talk about tradwives or traditional wives for a while now, but for some reason I kept putting this video topic on the back burner. But given how the internet is once again buzzing about tradwives and the fallout of the Sunday Times article on Ballerina Farm, it seems as good a time as any to finally talk about it. If you guys are unfamiliar with Ballerina Farm, lucky you. Ballerina Farm is the name of an Instagram account run by Mormon lifestyle influencer Hannah Nealman. Hannah, who has 8 children with her husband Daniel, posts about her life as a traditional homemaker and homesteader on her family farm in rural Utah.
We're making some Turkish eggs. So I started off by straining some of Daniel's homemade yogurt in a cheesecloth and hung that so it could get a bit thicker. Then I washed my butter. I also like to run it under some cold water to get it really nice and washed. And then I add some salt.
Her Instagram account is like insanely popular with over 10 million followers. She's so popular, in fact, that she's been dubbed the Queen of Tradwives, since much of her content falls into the online cultural milieu of tradwifery. So a tradwife is broadly defined as a woman who practices traditional gender roles. However, in most cases, when someone is talking about a tradwife, they're likely referring to a social media influencer who either displays or promotes traditional gender roles in their content or borrows from the aesthetic of other online tradwives. A few months ago, Megan Agnew, who's a journalist with the UK's Sunday Times, went to Hannah and Daniel's farm hoping to get to know the real woman behind the famous social media account. Unfortunately, the interview wasn't exactly what Megan expected, and she ended up publishing a pretty critical article about Ballerina Farm. During the interview, Megan noticed that Daniel would routinely interrupt Hannah or answer on Hannah's behalf. At one point, Megan asked Hannah how she feels about being labeled a tradwife by the internet, and Daniel quickly chimed in that they've basically accepted the label, saying if we're trad dad, tradwife, so be it. It's only after Daniel stops talking that Hannah is afforded the space to express her own opinion. And she then explains that she doesn't necessarily identify with the label herself. If that seems a bit domineering, just wait until I tell you guys what Hannah told Megan about when her and Daniel first met. But before we get to that, allow me a brief moment to thank our wonderful sponsor for today's video, Parade.
So I'm a mid-sized girly who loves to wear flowy skirts and dresses, but I absolutely cannot stand a chub rub. One of the ways that I deal with that is by always wearing shorts underneath my skirt or dress, and I'm absolutely obsessed with this new pair I just got from Parade. I have a discount code for you all, so make sure to listen till the end. These are the free comfort boxer briefs, so technically they're underwear, which is actually a lot better than wearing shorts because it means that you don't have to wear underwear underneath them. For reference, I'm wearing a size large and the color Flutter. They're super soft and very breathable and also like really stretchy, which I love. They're also high-waisted, which I really love. I don't really wear underwear that isn't high-waisted these days. Honestly, you can just wear these to lounge around the house, which is what I've been doing a lot of recently. And I love that Parade also sells a matching bralette, which is what I'm wearing right now, that goes with it. So the fabric of these boxer briefs and the bra are Parade's new cotton fabric, which is actually one of their best-selling fabrics. It's also made using upcycled cotton and uses 95% less water than traditional cotton does, which as a person who generally tries to be eco-friendly, I really love. Like I said, I do have a promo code for you guys. It's ANTI50, ANTI50, which gives you 50% off their entire site, no minimum purchase required, which is just a crazy good deal. I have seen that their styles tend to sell out pretty fast, so I'd encourage you guys to head over to their website and use my promo code. Thank you so much, Parade. Now back to the video.
Okay, so during the interview, Hannah told Megan the story of how she and Daniel first got together. At the time, Hannah was a dancer studying at Juilliard in New York City, and she was introduced to Daniel by a mutual friend while they were all watching a basketball game. Daniel was immediately smitten and wanted to marry her right there on the spot, but Hannah didn't exactly feel the same way. Daniel kept asking her out over the following 6 months, and she kept turning him down. One day, she told Daniel in passing that she'd be flying JetBlue from her home in Salt Lake City back to New York to continue her studies. Daniel, whose dad just happens to own JetBlue, pulled some strings to not only get himself on her flight, but also seated right next to her. This flight ended up being their first date. As many of my longtime viewers know, I used to work in aviation, so my mind immediately goes to wondering how this worked logistically. What if somebody was already in the seat next to her? Did they move that person to a different, possibly shittier seat? And what if the flight was full? Did they bump someone to make room for him? These are the kind of questions that keep my neurodivergent brain awake at night. But putting those questions aside, using your daddy's airline connections to get yourself seated next to someone who's continually rejected you for the last 6 months is just really creepy. Hannah also told Megan that when she and Daniel first started dating, she told him explicitly that she wanted to date for a year before getting married so she could finish school. Daniel didn't like this and told her it wouldn't work, so they wound up getting engaged after only dating for a month. At the start of their marriage, Hannah still danced. She mostly danced ballet, hence the name Ballerina Farm. But like many Mormon families do, they started having kids pretty much immediately. And as the number of kids grew, Hannah's dancing fell to the wayside. She told Megan she wanted to rekindle her love for dancing by transforming a barn on their property into a dance studio, but since they homeschool their children, the barn was ultimately turned into a schoolhouse. Which, her husband is the heir to an airline fortune, but for some reason they couldn't just build a separate space for the kids' schooling. They just had to use the one space that Hannah had set aside for herself. Reading the article and sifting through everything else that's come out since, I can't help but feel that Hannah's needs and wants are constantly at the bottom of her family's priority list. She wanted to wait to get married, but Daniel didn't. She wanted a dance studio, but apparently the kids needed a schoolhouse. It just seems like she's constantly sacrificing. Although Hannah has since spoken out against the article, claiming that nothing she or Daniel said during the interview should have given Megan the idea that there's an imbalance of power in their relationship, the recent egg apron debacle only reinforced this feeling for me.
Big present from Daniel. Hoping their tickets to Greece.
Where's it from?
I don't know, the boys took it off.
I took it off.
It's from Ukraine.
So, plane tickets? Ooh, a hat I can wear in Greece.
It's not a hat.
It's not.
Oh, my egg apron!
Eggs in it.
It's great. They can gather eggs.
So cute. It's really cute. It's a cute one.
That's the best. You're welcome.
Thanks, honey.
Hannah was obviously hoping for plane tickets to Greece, and instead, Daniel, son of the owner of one of America's most successful airlines, gets her an egg apron. He clearly isn't considering what his wife wants in this situation and instead gifts her something she can do chores with. Wasn't he taught that you should never buy your wife a vacuum or pots or pans for her birthday? I mean, an egg apron is basically just the cottagecore version of pots and pans. I've been telling Drew that I want to go to Sweden And if he gets me an egg apron instead of taking me to Sweden, I'm going to be real pissed. I want to be careful that I'm not brushing aside the possibility that Hannah really does love working in the home. I honestly think she probably does. I feel like something that's missing from the discourse on Tradwives is the acknowledgement that some of these women genuinely want to be at home cooking, cleaning, and taking care of the kids. In Hannah's situation, though, it's clear that she does have aspirations outside the home that Daniel perhaps doesn't consider. Unfortunately, this is a typical experience for many women raised in conservative Mormon culture. They are taught that a woman's highest calling is to be a wife and mother working in the home, that God has specifically designed women for this role, and that any other aspirations a woman may have are inferior. Naturally, conservative Mormon men are also taught this, which is why so many of them brush aside their wife's wants or needs if they fall outside the realm of the home, like Daniel did. These teachings are a major undercurrent in the tradwife movement, but aren't universally accepted by all tradwives. As I said at the beginning of this video, an influencer might be considered a tradwife simply because her content borrows from the aesthetic of online tradwifery. Take Nara Smith, for instance, another so-called tradwife. Like Hannah, Nara is an extremely successful social media influencer with almost 10 million followers on TikTok. She's known for her videos in which she cooks these elaborate meals from scratch, often for her husband or one or more of her 3 kids, while wearing these glamorous outfits. She'll often make from scratch things that no normal person would ever attempt to make from scratch.
My sister's in town to visit, and she's been craving bubblegum so bad, but she ran out, so I just decided to make it for her. I poured some powdered sugar on some wax paper and created a well before combining my gum base with some corn syrup and slowly melting it down. Once that was all melted, I gave it a good stir and poured it into my little powdered sugar wells I created. One of her favorite flavors is green apple, so I made a green apple one, and then also experimented with making a cinnamon vanilla gum. Once the mixture was cold enough to handle, I kneaded it and then stretched it out and made sure to always have it covered in the powdered sugar so it wouldn't stick. Then I rolled out my gum, cut it into equal pieces, and decided to go for a little gum ball. Once all the green apple ones were formed, I moved on to my cinnamon vanilla ones and set them aside before tossing them in some more powdered sugar. To keep them fresh, I placed them in some wax paper, twisted the sides, and repeated that process with all of them. And then they were ready to try. These tasted even better than store-bought gum, and she was so excited. The cinnamon vanilla ones tasted like a donut. I was very pleased about.
Also, the girl is stunning. Absolutely stunning. Both Nara and her husband Lucky work as models on top of their blossoming social media careers. Here's a potentially hot take. I don't consider Nara a tradwife, but I understand what makes so many people think she is. Nara often begins her videos by saying something like, "My husband was craving flaming hot Cheetos, so I just decided to whip up a batch from scratch so that he wouldn't have to go to the store." To the passing viewer, it gives the impression that this level of domestic duty, where a wife doesn't just cook meals for her family, but also makes the family's snacks from scratch, is something Nara believes every woman should aspire to. It also doesn't help that the aesthetic of some of her content harkens back to an earlier time. According to researcher Mariel Cooksey, the tradwife movement isn't just an ideological movement, it's also an aesthetic one. Many tradwives wear garb inspired by an earlier period, typically the 1950s, film themselves cooking in vintage-style kitchens, and set their videos to decades-old songs like Baby I'm Yours by Barbara Lewis. So considering just aesthetics, some of Nara's content could classify as tradwife. However, I personally have a problem with using this metric because it allows us to deem content generally not associated with tradwifery to be tradwife. For example, the kitchen witches of TikTok are mostly white women who post videos of themselves cooking from scratch in quaint cottagecore inspired kitchens and set it all to theme music from the 1998 film Practical Magic. Are they tradwives? I don't think so. While yes, the cottagecore aesthetic can evoke conservative values and gender roles, and it's certainly an aesthetic that tradwives have capitalized on, it's not always directly tied to conservative ideologies. It's important to be aware of what trends harbor alt-right content, but sometimes a content creator just genuinely enjoys a throwback aesthetic. They might just genuinely enjoy baking elderberry pies in their 1920s cottage decorated with dried flowers. And I think that's the case with Nara Smith. As far as I can tell, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, Nara has never said that her content is something all wives must emulate or that traditional gender roles are the way to go. And while she is Mormon, she doesn't seem to discuss her religious or political views on her page beyond just reading some scripture here and there. Nara herself has even pushed back on the tradwife label, saying that she considers herself to be a working mom who genuinely loves cooking for her family. In my opinion, pigeonholing Nara into tradwifery verges on policing women on how they decide to express themselves. I mean, it's almost like people are finding fault with Nara simply because she has stereotypically feminine interests and highlights these interests on her social media. I was actually talking to Sam from Zelf on the Shelf about all of this, and she said that Nara is almost post-trad in the sense that she loves cooking independent of the patriarchy. And I tend to agree with Sam's assessment. But what do you guys think? Is Nara Smith a tradwife? I'm completely open to the possibility that there's something I'm missing, so if you guys have a different opinion, please drop a comment. Okay, so moving on to someone who is unmistakably a tradwife, let's talk about Estee Williams. Estee is a comparably smaller creator, but her content is tradwife in both ideology and aesthetic. In her TikToks, she performs domestic duties like vacuuming and baking bread, or rants about feminism while wearing 50s inspired dresses and pinup model-esque makeup and hair. Estee, unlike Hannah or Nara, unashamedly takes on the label of tradwife.
Today, I'm going to be talking about the tradwife movement. There are so many men and women using their social media to promote and showcase traditional gender roles because they are valued. In a world full of chaos, there is a shift happening where people are becoming more resilient and rebelling against that chaos happening right now. Women are proudly stating that they don't want a career and they want to be a full-time wife and mother. And the truth is, there is no higher calling than being a wife and a mother for a woman. Now, let me make this crystal clear. I am not undermining any woman who wants a career. If you want a career along being a wife and a mother, that is great. But being a wife and a mother should be your top priority always. And that is what is so great about this movement. Order is coming back into place in a chaotic world. You will also see a lot of similar topics being talked about along tradwife TikTok, and that is masculine men, feminine women, providing, homemaking. All those topics go together hand in hand to create a more traditional marriage. Now, it is a personal choice, and this is where I say I appreciate working mothers and wives. I do not bash any woman who wants a career, and no homemaker should bash any woman, and vice versa.
Girl, come on. Is it really a personal choice? Let's break this down. Estee believes that the world has fallen into chaos and that she, along with other tradwives, are bringing order to that chaos. What's the source of this chaos? Women who don't practice traditional gender roles. And what's the order? Tradwives publicly living out traditional marriage and encouraging others to do the same. Estee is both claiming that her lifestyle is the solution to what she believes are the world's problems, and that women can choose not to live like her. These two claims don't make sense together. You can't say that you're not undermining or bashing career women while simultaneously claiming that career women are chaotic and ignoring their God-given calling. It's not truly a choice for a woman to live traditionally if she's taught that not doing so will bring chaos to the world. Choice in this instance implies that any option is equally valid, and that's clearly not what Estee believes. Sifting through various tradwife content, I've yet to come across a tradwife that demonstrates using data or evidence that tradwifery is the superior marriage and family structure. A few months ago, Estee and her husband Connor went on Dr. Phil to discuss their tradwife lifestyle. At one point, Dr. Phil asks Connor why having a tradwife is important to him. Connor replied, "When you raise a family, her taking care of the children, staying home with the children, coming home to a well-cooked meal, a clean house, and just having a wonderful life." Is it just me, or is this kind of a non-answer? He's basically saying having a tradwife is important to him because having a tradwife is important to him. I think something that we should all take from this is that tradwifery isn't a movement based on anything other than authoritarian dogma. Most tradwives follow this lifestyle simply because they believe it's what they're supposed to do. There really isn't any other reason beyond that, at least from what I've seen. I think his answer also implies something much more sinister. Before Dr. Phil asked Connor why having a tradwife is important to him, the show featured a clip of Connor saying the following: "A modern man would feel much more insecure than I do as a traditional husband. I'm the leader of the marriage. I'm the one responsible for coming up with the solutions, and Estee doesn't ever talk back to me." In both the featured clip and his response to Dr. Phil's question, Connor exclusively lists out things that benefit him from the tradwife lifestyle. He gets to be the leader. He gets to make all of the decisions. He gets yummy home-cooked meals that he didn't have to prepare. He gets a clean house without having to lift a finger, and he gets to soothe his insecurities without actually having to do any internal work. I think this all reveals who tradwifery is really for, and I don't think it's for the tradwives. So there are some journalists, including Jessica Gross of the New York Times, that think that tradwife content is actually for right-leaning men. In Jessica's article, she cites the stories of former tradwives who say that their ultra-conservative ex-husbands were abusive, and that the men in these communities who are ultimately the beneficiaries of tradwifery are often antisocial and misogynistic. Journalist and internet commentator Max Reed thinks that tradwifery is actually for men who have something of a Donna Reed fetish. My own experience with tradwife TikTok supports this theory. After a few minutes of looking through tradwife content for this video, the algorithm recommended to me related content that other users searched for, which included key phrases like how to properly discipline your wife and obedient wife on knees. I mean, that sounds pretty fetishy, right? I also didn't have to scroll for very long before I found some women using tradwifery to market their OnlyFans.
We're tradwives. We believe in gender roles in our marriage.
We're tradwives. We believe a clean home is a happy home.
We're tradwives. Always obey our husbands.
We're tradwives. We choose to stay home and support our husbands.
Tradwives. We always have dinner ready when our husbands get off work.
Tradwives. We always satisfy our husband's needs.
Tradwives. We wouldn't be caught dead in a bar or club without our husband.
Tradwives. We always respect and appreciate our husbands for their hard work.
Now, I don't at all bring this up to denigrate these women. They've found a popular trend to capitalize on, and I think that they deserve to get their bag. But I think this does go to show that tradwifery might be for the benefit of a male audience rather than the benefit of the tradwives themselves. There's at least a pretty obvious link between tradwife content and the sex industry. So I know that I've spent a large part of this video talking about individual tradwife creators, but I actually think that these women are just a symptom of a larger problem. Most tradwife content is tied to the patriarchy patriarchal religious movement of Christian evangelicalism. Just like tradwife Estee Williams herself said, evangelicals often believe that a woman's calling from God is to be a wife and mother. They believe this because of the teachings of their predominantly male religious leaders. Tradwifery isn't born from individual creators. It's born from the larger system of patriarchy. And perhaps we should set our sights on dismantling patriarchy through systemic change rather than lambasting Nara Smith for making bubblegum from scratch. What's so fascinating to me is that if you think about it, tradwives have found a way to turn their belief in traditional gender roles into careers for themselves. Contrary to their own teachings, tradwives actually support themselves independently from their husbands. Even OnlyFans models, who I presume don't actually believe in the tradwife lifestyle, use tradwifery to sell their content. This makes me think that maybe there's a part of tradwife content that we should actually be celebrating. Because unbeknownst to them, these women are openly embracing feminism while believing they're icons of traditional wifehood. Thank you guys so much for watching, and a huge thank you to my patrons who help make these videos possible. If you like this video, please be sure to subscribe and ring the bell. If you'd like to follow me on social media, my Instagram is Taylor_the_antibot. And if you'd like to consider supporting this channel financially, a link to my Patreon will be down in the description, and we'll see you on the next one. Say bye!